These are our national priorities as Uganda. Uganda has set 5 priorities. The first is infrastructure development in roads, railways, and energy. The second is improving government effectiveness in service delivery. The third is in enhancing agricultural production and productivity. The fourth is employment creation for the youth, women and SMEs, human resource development. These 5 priorities, in order to achieve them as a nation, we have to change our work ethic. You cannot improve service delivery when people don't want to work, when nurses are not at the station in time, when people or teachers in school come late. There's no way you can improve service delivery in the district if workers are not there, or if they are there, they are not working. You cannot expect people to have service in justice if magistrates start work at 11 o'clock a.m. and then leave 2 hours early. There will be backlogs in the courts, there will be backlog everywhere, and so people will not get services. And when there is injustice, there is no service delivery. People want services. One of the important services is justice. They want quick justice. You have, how do you call it? Justice delayed is justice denied. Yeah. So if people have to come, this case is adjourned, and adjourned, and adjourned, case which would have taken a week takes years. So that is injustice. So you can see that service delivery will not be there. The agricultural production that we are talking about will not come if people are not working. Employment creation. Why is it that all the hotels, major hotels in Uganda, are manned by Kenyans? General managers are all what? Kenyans. Why? I asked one of them in Kampala, is a big hotel owner, has several of them. I said, why do you employ Kenyans when you have so many Ugandans who have studied hotel management? He says, where you put one Kenyan, you need 6 Ugandans. That's why. And when I went out in other parts of Uganda, it was the same. I don't know what it is in Gulu, in Mbale, in everywhere, but everywhere you go to any major hotel, it's Kenyans who are manager, general manager. Under them, so many Ugandans. But they require a Kenyan to be able to run those hotels. Isn't it really an indictment on us as Ugandans about our work ethic, our poor work ethic? So we educate our children only to be employed or supervised by others. Chinese have to bring their own supervisors because where you put Ugandans there, they don't want to work. Before they get jobs, they are praying and fasting to get jobs. When they get them, they don't want to work. People want jobs, they don't want work. There's a difference between a job and what? Work. And I'm going to show you shortly. So they just want jobs to show off, put on ties and have this powerful job. But when they get there, they don't want to work. So this is a problem. We cannot develop the human resource without work ethic. There are nations like Japan which don't even have any resources. Singapore, they don't have natural resources. What they have done is to develop their what? Human resource. If you put an industry in Singapore, you'll know it will work because people are very hardworking. In Japan, many people work more than 10, 12, 16 hours a day. That's how that nation has greatly developed. Right after the Second World War, they realized they didn't have a lot of natural resources. They started to develop their human resource. By the way, for God to bless a nation, the major 2 resources are the human beings and the natural resources, land. Land and the human resources are the greatest and the most important resources God gives to the nation. The most important are human beings. The second is land. Even if you have land and natural resources, without the human beings with the capacity to innovate and work and change, the resources will be squandered. The other resources like land, capital, and others will be squandered. Look at Congo. Congo has, the wealth of Congo combined 6 nations in Europe. It's richer than US, $21 trillion. Congo. US is about what, 16. German 4. You can combine 8 nations in Europe to get the wealth of Congo. But because Congo does not have the human resource developed, all her resources are being what? Squandered and wasted. And the people there in total, complete poverty. Because they are always worrying, fighting, small things, while the others are coming and taking away their gold. There are these powerful minerals that you talk about. All these phones have coltan, and other minerals that you can't get elsewhere. They are in Congo. But the human resource is not well developed. They don't understand what they need to do. They don't value things. You come and buy them small money for them to go so that you can take away their gold and their coltan, which you can't get elsewhere. So you can see how important these resources are, especially 2, 3, 4, and 5. They all depend on the human resource, the work ethic, the people themselves. So what we are doing here is to speak to you, the youth, the leaders that are going to be the leaders tomorrow in Atiak. You changing can attract so much money that people would want to live in in Atiak. You understand that? Somebody said one time, and I thought about it and said it's right. If you take a nation like Israel and you take Ugandans to Israel, now all Ugandans, 42 million Ugandans, put them in Israel. Bring the Jews, who are only 8 million, put them here. In 10 years, all Ugandans in Israel were asking for a visa to come back to Uganda. Do you agree with me? Yes. Because they will change it so. When they come here, they really marvel what we have. Everything is green. We have land, we have rain twice a year, we have beautiful soils. They really marvel that people can live in poverty. When you go to Israel, it's desert. Total, complete desert. Yet they feed all of Europe. They feed Europe with fruits and vegetables. They have only one lake, Lake Galilee, which you read about in the Bible. The only lake they have. They use the water, and it's the only water they have, so they use it in a way that is amazing. You go and flush the toilet, you urinate in the toilet, you flush that water, it goes through channels and it comes back in the next 2-3 hours. It's the same water you are drinking. You understand that? Yes, because they don't have a lot of water. They have developed systems where they do drip irrigation, meaning they studied the plant and they said this is the only amount of water it needs every day. So it just drops. So it gets into the soil through the roots, then it evaporates and then it comes back. So it's the only water from Lake Galilee that they are using in everything. So they have developed systems that's just amazing. Somebody was showing me a pictures yesterday, Mama Maria. She's there in Israel. She sent me a picture and said, these bananas came from Uganda and the soil, you saw that? And they were showing us the bananas they picked from here and the soil. They had to take soil in airplanes from here because they have desert and sand. They don't have soil. For us, we have plenty of it. We even wash it off our feet and legs because we have plenty of it. For them, they don't have soil. They had to come and pick it here to take it. They took our matoke, bananas, and they are beautiful bananas. So you see how important to change the people. So if we change you, the youth who are here, and you change your perspective and mind about work, and then you change and then you start to get these big visions, you can change this place, and people will be running to come here to Atiak. So you understand that? So you are the future of this place. When you change, everything will change. God does not change your environment. He changes you. It is you he changes, and then you change the what? The environment. Does that make sense? Are you ready to change this place, to transform it? Yes. Are you ready to transform it? Yes. How many are ready to transform it? Only 5? Okay. Okay, you are ready. So now listen to what I'm going to be sharing. The reason I always start like this is because when you change people's philosophy, you change the theology of the people, then you change their philosophy of life, which then changes their political and economic ideology, and then it changes the programs, laws, and policies in a nation like Uganda. For us to transform Uganda, we always start with changing the theology of the people. And I'm going to give examples how this has happened in various nations. As David has told you, I've taken many, many years, about 20 years now, studying this topic, how a nation is transformed. I've done a lot of research and study to realize that we put sometimes emphasis where we shouldn't and leave certain things, which are most important. Now, theology is very important. Theology is the way you believe. You see, God created this world. God created the spirit world and the material world. There are laws that He set in motion which don't change. So if you have a wrong perspective about land, about people, about work, and yet God, the Creator, has set these laws in motion, you cannot develop. You cannot succeed. You cannot sustainably change a community because your perspective is wrong and His is. And because He set this notion, set these laws in motion, which don't change, you'll end up failing. I'll give you an example of the communists. They thought, we have to change, we have to take over nations. There was a man called Karl Marx, and his friend Friedrich Engels, and later on Darwin. They combined their theories and said, we have to take these human beings, they're like animals, and we have to treat them like animals and change them. So they started in France where they didn't succeed. Briefly, they took over. They didn't succeed. So they managed to get a whole nation called Russia. And they said, let's do an experiment here. After 70 years, the people there, the death, in the last century, 200 million people died just because these three people wanted to experiment on human beings, trying to change the order that God had set, resulting in 200 million people die. Even now, the people are dying in China. Have you heard of coronavirus? These people were trying to do something in the lab, and these escaped from them. You can't tell the world. But they were trying to bring control. That's why that thing is happening there. It's not what they are saying. But communists say, no, human beings don't have a spirit. They are just material. They call it dialectic materialism. And they combined it with the Darwin saying the law of survival is the survival of the fittest. The one who is most fit survives. The weaker one, that is the Darwin theory. And when Darwin brought his and combined with the others, they were so happy because Darwin came from philosophy, then Engels came from economic side. So when they combined it with the natural science, they said, we've come up with a solution. We are getting rid of God, and we'll get rid of families, and then we'll get rid of the fear of people have about God. And then we'll start a society, and it will be wonderful. So it will be very wonderful. 200 million people died because they had to force people. They confiscated their property. Now, if you have a wrong theology, you end up with the wrong philosophy, like they did, their communism. Then it starts to affect their politics and their economics because they are using dialectic materialism. Their economic interpretations were all wrong. You can't tell people to work together in a community like here at Yak and tell them greed. Capitalism is bad because people are greedy, so we will own everything together. Have you heard of that? That is communism. Everything is all ours together. God did not say that. God said, thou shalt not steal. When He said, thou shalt not steal, He meant you can own. Can you steal something which does not belong to anybody? No. So God Himself instituted private ownership. So if you remove private ownership, you are using a wrong theology, and it will not succeed in the long run. It may succeed by force, as it initially did in Russia and China, but it will not be sustainable, because that is a wrong theology. God wants people to have ownership. When you work with your hands, you feel good that I've built this house out of my what? My sweat. Now I have built it. That is how God created all of us. So if you take away that ownership and say it all belongs to the state, all of you belong to the state, you work for the state, is that sustainable? No, it can't. So you've started with the wrong theology and the wrong philosophy and the wrong politics and policies and programs. They will not work. They may work for a short time by force, but it cannot be sustainable. Does that make sense now? You say, oh, because when we force these people to denounce capitalism initially was good, because capitalism was built on 3 pillars. One is private ownership. That's how biblical capitalism is built on private ownership. That is number 1. Number 2, free market. When you own, you can sell to whoever wants, okay? But the third element and the pillar of biblical capitalism is community consciousness. So not only should you work very hard to own, that is number 1. Number 2, you should be free to sell and dispose of what you want, whatever you have, anyway, anytime, by your own force. The third, you must also consider the people around you. Those 3 pillars is biblical capitalism. When that was lost and the greed came in, then capitalists became very, very greedy. They have to squeeze everything out of you. Now, that is a biblical concept which was misused. But then the communists went to the other extreme, which wasn't biblical. You understand that? Which wasn't godly. And so they said, because these people, capitalists, are greedy, so let's come up with a system when we put people like working together all the time, everything only together in a community. If they live in it long enough, then the greed will do what? We go, no. Human beings are greedy from the fall. And you cannot change them by what? By force. You can only change them from within, by changing their attitudes, by changing their values. Does that make sense? So you always have to start with the right theology in order to succeed. So that's why communism, after 70 years, did what? Failed in October 1991. It crumbled. Now they're just holding on to that, but it will not succeed. It has not succeeded in Russia. It didn't succeed. What? I didn't hear that. Okay. So God has set laws in motion, like laws of work. They are like the other laws, law of gravity, the law of flotation, the law of reproduction, the law of sowing and reaping, the laws of motion, the laws of demand and supply, so on and so forth. These laws have been set in motion. They don't change. You come, live, and go while they are still here. These laws which you studied in school, like gravity, you don't first have to know about it to affect you. Do these laws affect the women in the village who have never gone to school? Yes. Even if they don't even know them. They have never heard of the law of gravity, but they still affect them. So the laws of work that I'm talking about also are like these laws. They don't change with time. So we call them timeless principles. In the Bible, they are referred to as ordinances of heaven and what? Earth. They describe the way God normally accomplishes his will in the universe. Why do we always quote God? Because he's the manufacturer, our own manufacturer. He created us. He knows us better than we know ourselves. He knows the world. He knows the earth. He knows these laws. The better we know them, the better we live in this universe. The better we understand them, abide by them, the better. Children have to have parents because they haven't learned these laws. For instance, the law of flotation. If you have a baby who is crawling, would you leave the baby next to a swimming pool? Why? They don't know the law of flotation. If they crawl and get to the swimming pool, they fall in because they don't know these laws. So the children have to be raised by parents who have already understood the law of gravity, the law of rotation, of motion, and so on. So that's how, the better you know these laws, the better you live in the world. So the same with this work. Now look at the laws of work. God himself ordained what? Work. Do you know that it is God who ordained work? Does everybody know that? God, your creator, ordained what? Work. So he created you to work. He himself worked 6 days and rested 1 day. For us, we want to rest 6 days and work 1 day. God worked 6 days and rested 1 day. So that means the creator himself said the way we sustained is through work and rest. Rest is important, but only in proportion to the work we have done. So if you go and rest without working, you are breaking that law. So tell your neighbor, if you rest more than you are working, you are making a mistake. Because your work should be 6 times more than your rest. Your work should be 6 times more than your what? Your rest. So if you are resting more than you are working, you already have started to die inside without your knowledge. You are breaking a law. But these laws, you don't break them, they break you. You understand that? Can you break the law of gravity? No, it breaks you. You say, I'm going to break the law of gravity? No, it's the one which will break you. You stand on the roof and step in the air and you'll see. You step in the air and you'll fall. You say, oh, I've broken the law of gravity. No, it has broken you. You don't break these laws, they break you. So if God says 6 days you shall labor, then the 7th day you shall what? Rest. He says you shall labor. So do you labor? Do you labor for 6 days? You are breaking that law. If you are not laboring and you just want to rest. So he said 6 days you shall labor. For you, you want to rest 6 days. You understand that? So this, God himself ordained this. Number 2, work is the means by which man exercises his dominion over nature. He created you. He said, let us make this man in our image so that he may exercise dominion. So God himself said, let us make man in our what? Image. Let him exercise what? Dominion. So he created you to exercise dominion. He created you to rule. But the way you rule is through what? Through what? Work. If you don't work, you will not exercise dominion over nature. You understand that? Now, in what I'm going to explain, man only exercises dominion if you work beyond the duty. If all your work is just what you are paid for, you have just neutralized yourself. You always have to go beyond the duty to exercise what? Dominion. You'll come to understand that much better later on. So your dominion only starts at the time when you've gone beyond duty. Jesus said, if somebody forces you to go 1 mile, go what? 2 what? It is this 2nd mile that you exercise dominion. If you only do 1 mile, that one you're just anybody like anybody else, because that one you're paid for. So you're just neutralized. To exercise dominion, you have to go beyond what? Duty. You have to go beyond duty. That most people don't know that. It's when you go beyond the duty, it's those people who go beyond the duty that become leaders. Have you ever noticed? People who are always waiting for the clock to knock 5 o'clock and they're already set, got in your marks, get set. At the moment it's 5 o'clock, they are already running away. By 4:30, they have gone to the toilet. Because they don't want to use their own time for the toilet. They want to use the company time for the toilet. So 4:30, they go to the toilet. 4:45, they are cleaning out the desk. And at 5 o'clock, they are... No, that kind of person will never exercise what? Dominion. Because that is already paid for. So you just remain there. You have to go beyond that duty to go beyond what is normally paid for you to exercise dominion. You'll understand that as I go on. So, God wants us to exercise dominion over what? Nature. Nature. What does that mean? Exercising dominion over nature. How many of you are not feeling the sunshine now? Where you are sitting. Do you feel the sunshine now? Why? Why? Isn't it hot outside? Why are we not feeling it? We have a fan. Have a ceiling. The ventilation. That is dominion. Man has dominated nature. Nature outside is hot. Inside is what? Cool. Can a lion do that? Can a lion do that? How about an elephant? They have been here as long as we have been here. Are they able to do this, what we are doing now? Having a fan and if there is a storm outside and it's raining, will it affect us? No. So that is exercising dominion over nature. That's what God created man for. We are different from animals. Lions can only chase antelopes and eat them. And after that, tomorrow they have to hunt again. And the next day, and the next day. They have been here all these years. They have never exercised any dominion over nature. If there is a drought, many of them die. They can't keep water. They can't preserve it. Now, in Africa, we are not very far from the animals. Because likewise, every time we have a drought in Uganda, people end up what? Dying. Even when they have had a lot of rain in the previous what? Season. Have you heard that? Sometime back we had 47 districts affected by that Benja drought. And people were dying of what? Hunger. When we have 2 seasons every year. In Europe, they only have 1 season because more than half of the year they have snow, isn't it? Snow. So they only cultivate for 5 months, 5-6 months. The rest of the time, the whole land is covered by snow. The last year I had gone to teach in a college, and we woke up in the morning, and the snow was this high. We couldn't even open the what? The car. The car, because you can imagine 3 feet of snow, it has covered the car. You have to get these small tractors. Every house has these small tractors. In Colorado Springs, where I was, everybody owns a small tractor to remove the what? The snow. But they never die of hunger. Famine, drought doesn't affect them. Why? They have exercised dominion over what? Nature. They have managed to use land in the short time, produce so much food that they always have enough. They can even send some of it to us when we are dying of what? Hunger. Why haven't we exercised dominion over nature with all the water that we have in Anaka? Why don't we dam it? Why don't we store it so that we can do irrigation and use every piece of land like they do in Israel? When you go to Israel, it's amazing. One side are Jews, another side are Arabs. The side of the Arabs is all desert, dry, stones. The side of the Jews is what? Green. With one lake, the lake of Galilee. The one lake, they have pumped the water, cleansed it, then they irrigate, produce so much fruit and feeds France, Germany, and the whole of Europe. They take vegetables from Israel. Can you imagine? A small country, which is just like one of our districts here, have plenty of food. So that's man exercised the dominion through what? Through work. If we don't work, we will not exercise what? Dominion. Now I'll show you shortly that work alone is not enough. You have to include what? Thinking. So in Africa, we sometimes do go that and work, but we are not different from the donkey, because all that we do is just to work without thinking. In the Middle Ages, after the Reformation, this is what happened. People were working, and then the Christians started to interpret the scriptures right. They said, at the fall, man fell from his dominion over nature. The same way he fell morally. Morally meaning you should have not, God said don't do this, and they did it. That's a moral sin. But that moral issue, rebellion, also affected man's relationship with the what? With nature. So we fell from our position of dominion. Because we fell from our position of dominion, we ended up instead of working, we toil. What is the difference between toil and work? You're going to see it. I'm going to show it here. Through work, man turns the earth's raw materials into what? Finished product for his own what? Benefit. Do you understand that? When you work, you turn sand into a laptop. This laptop you see here, the most important components called the chips are made out of what? Sand. These chips, computer chips, this laptop my brother here is holding, and the most important element there is made of sand. Now, sand is a raw material that God put into the earth. Coltan, which is a metal, is also part of the materials. When people start to put work and thinking, combining work and thinking, they start to produce what they call technology. So instead of using a, do you have magulukumi here? Magulukumi, these big trucks? You have many, eh? How much is a magulukumi of sand here? Magulukumi, 10 tire truck. A whole truck of sand, eh? To 150. Wow. The whole truck, eh? Now, if you don't combine your work with your thinking, this is what will happen. A whole magulukumi will cost you only 120. But somebody in California, in what they call that valley, Silicon Valley, they take a small amount of sand, work on it, and they turn into computer chips. A small amount of it. And it becomes very expensive. You buy that laptop, computer, mine is about 5 million, this small one. So you can imagine for you how many trucks of magulukumi will produce 5 million. When for somebody in the Silicon Valley takes only a handful and makes computer chips and produces the products which you buy at what? 5 million. So you can see why you should combine work with what? With the thinking. So if you only work and work, that is called toil. If you combine your work with thinking, you have what you call technology. Technology was born in monasteries when the people in the church started to realize that at the fall, we lost our dominion over nature. And because of that fall, our minds have been affected. So we must go back to looking for better and easier ways of working. Okay? Which includes our what? Thinking. If we just work, you'll not be different from an ox or a donkey. So these priests, these monks who were in monasteries, listen to what they started to reason. To take water from the valley into the mountain, because they were all on the mountain tops. That's why they built the monasteries. So they had to walk so many miles to pick what? Water, which they would use. And for others who were not priests, they would marry many women. So it was the women who would carry the what? The water. But these priests, because they didn't have women, they had to do what? To pick it themselves. So they had to think now for easier and faster ways of getting what? You understand that? They had to look for faster and easier ways of collecting water. The village where I grew up is not very different from Etiak. We had to walk we had to go 1.5 hours going and 1.5 hours coming back to just get one jerrycan of what? Of water. Because we would line up to get one. The whole parish had one well. So you can imagine spending 3 hours to get one what? So we had, at least each one of us had to at least get 2 jerrycans. That is 6 hours. Think about 6 hours every day. If we were to calculate, a day is how many hours? A day is how many hours? 24 hours. So you take how many hours to collect 2 jerrycans a day? 6 hours. What is the percentage here? A quarter. Isn't this a quarter of your day? So every day you spend a quarter of your day to just get fetching water. So if you spend 80 years on earth and you appear before God, and he tells you how did you use your time, and you say a quarter of it, 20 of my years were spent collecting water. Can you imagine that? Now, that is toil. So if you spend your whole life, a quarter of your life on earth, just collecting water. So these priests started to reason that why should a human being do what wind can do? Why should a human being do what wind can do? So wind can push our water from the bottom to the what? To the top. So they invented these what? Windmills. So that it can, when the wind comes, then it turns this wheel and then it pushes the water up. So technology was born in monasteries because they didn't have women to do their work, to grind their grain, to carry their water, to wash their clothes. So they had to come up with faster ways to do the work they are supposed to do. At the same time, they were supposed to appear in the service, to carry out the church service, and so on and so forth. So this thinking in the monasteries produced technology. They were very hard. They had to work very hard, but they had to think. When you combine thinking with working, you produce technology. May I repeat that? The Greeks, they had the wrong theology in Greek culture. Those who were cultivating their mind to think were not working. The Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, they never worked. They were just sitting there thinking. Those who were thinking were not working. Those who were working were not thinking. So you had a dichotomized society. The church introduced another breed of people who were both working and what? Thinking. When you combine working and thinking, what do you produce? Technology. You've got it now. So some of you are educated. If you don't want to work, you will not produce technology. You will be like Socrates. You'll be like Aristotle. And so you'll be just there for us. When you get a very brilliant person who is very wise, and you start to put him to work, they'll come up with faster ways of doing that work, and that's how technology is born in any society. The person who invented the bulb was called Edison. He did 999 experiments trying to invent the what? The bulb. 900 and what? 99. It was number 1,000 which produced the bulb. That is hard work. He was asked, do you regret the 999 experiments you made? He says, no. I know 999 ways in which you don't produce a bulb, and I know one which produces the bulb. So I don't regret. So, if we produce people in Anaka, educated people in Anaka, who are who are very, very, very hardworking, but very, very educated, that's how we produce technology here. If you don't want to work just because you have a degree and you have a master's, you will not be any different from this Greek philosophy, which did not change the world. It is Christianity and that this teaching I'm telling you, this theology is what changed the world. When you combine work and what? Thinking. Do we have any intellectuals here? You who have studied? Do we have any intellectuals? Those of you who have studied and got your degrees. Are you not intellectuals? You don't want to accept that you're intellectuals? Or you're fearing to put up your hand because you have not invented the safety pin yet? You fear to put up your hand because you thought I was going to ask you what have you invented. But you can't invent if you're not hardworking. What will happen is when you are very hardworking, but you have the brains, you start to invent. Does that make sense? That is the beginning. Okay? So, through work, man turns the earth is what? Into what? look at this room alone. Look at the hard work somebody put in the bulb, another one put it in technology, changing electric energy into light energy. You know, a lot of these things come from somebody thinking and working. It has come a long way. Many, many years of working. Then this generation passes on what they have learned to the next. What Newton discovered, you don't need to go and discover it. You just use that to discover the next level. That's the difference we have from the animals. Animals can't pass on much to the next generation. All the lion can do is to teach its cubs to chase the what? That's all. Because they are limited in language, limited in thinking, they are very greedy. Yeah? There are so many limits. So they can't pass on. That's why they haven't achieved very much. Okay? Without the strength they have. Human beings are different. We have something that goes beyond them. We have what they call the language. Do you understand that? The language stores the wisdom of every generation so that it can pass it on to the what? The next generation. Now, beyond language, we have what we call writing. When a language has no literature, you have to change the literal language, what people speak, into a written form so that people can write what they know in this generation so that the children can read it. You understand that? So what the Bible and missionaries did, everywhere they went, they made sure they changed our dialects into literal languages, meaning they came up with the alphabet. So they had what we are saying in Luganda is what I know. I don't know what it was here. But in Luganda, they came up with A, E, Y, O, U. Wa, Ya, Cha, Ha, Nga. Ba, Pa. Eh? You have it here? Oh, you have the same. I didn't know that. So what they did, they found these Baganda, Bacholi, Langi, who are only speaking, but they are not writing. They know that you cannot change that generation and you pass on knowledge through oral what? No, it's very, very limited. Sometimes they change it. The story which started with the 5 kilograms, by the time it comes here, it is 20 or 80 kilograms because everybody adds. Now, you can't change a community like that because they will misrepresent what you said. So they came up with the dialect. These dialects were changed into literal languages. Changing dialects into literal languages was the key to transforming communities. That's why God made sure when he brought these 3 million people from Egypt who were slaves, the only way to transform them was to give them a written text. He told Moses, write. He gave them the 10 Commandments and the other laws. There are 613 combined. So Moses wrote 5 books. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and what? Deuteronomy. And he said every man is a teacher. Every man was required to read that law, understand that law, meditate on that law, and teach it to his own what? Children. So every man in his home was the teacher. And then the mother. So the children would learn from their parents. So the primary school was in the house. When they left and went into a synagogue, that was the secondary school. When they left that and then go to the temple, then that is the university. Do you understand how the education system was? That's why Israel became the most advanced nation up to now. Topmost billionaires and millionaires and scientists and Nobel Prize winners, they're all Jews because of that system. That's how you transform a nation. Israel is the most advanced. These iPhones were invented by them. These computers were invented by them. Because they don't have a good marketing system, they ask the Americans. They invent, they give to Americans, and they do what? They market it. Medicines, every type of medicine. You know what they have come up recently with? They keep blood in a flour form, just like maize flour. Yeah? So for them, they have enough, just like you have sacks of maize flour. That's how they keep blood. Blood group O, blood group B, because it's easier to keep that way. So every time somebody needs blood, they just take a kilo, mix their neck with a certain amount of water, and that's how they keep their blood. They have come up with so many inventions, those Israelites. Okay? Now, listen to this part. I don't want you to miss it. So when missionaries came, they knew the way to transform these actually people is give them a written what? Listen to their words, let them explain to you, and then you come up with an alphabet. Then you change their dialect into a literal language. When you do that, you are now able to store knowledge. You can't store knowledge without language. You understand that? No, you can't. You may pass it on through oral tradition, but that is limited. Those will be stories and myths. People will add on myth. That tree you see, they will come up with myth. What you've written down develops science. Does that make sense? Then they can pass on. So what Newton said or discovered can be written, and the next generation reads it. Then the next generation, then the next generation. That's how you develop science. Does that make sense? So they come up with the alphabet, then they can write the invention of that the generation, and the more the language grows, the more the transformation. May I repeat that? Yeah. The transformation of the land of Acholi will be limited by the language of the people. If the language has not grown, don't expect that community to develop. No. Development is always, and transformation is always limited by the language. That's why when the people in Asia realized what the Western people have done, they are doing their science in their language. The Koreans, they learn everything in Korean. They have come up with their technology, with their names. So they have a name for computer chips. They have their names in Korean. That's how those nations have been able to what? To develop. For us here, we don't understand the importance of language. You understand that? We think we have to copy others. And the more you speak English, the more people say here, oh, you're Molekebana is on a class of his own. We think education is just the way you speak English. And so for you, when you're speaking English, you even change the microphone, the way you speak. And then you think that is now. The rest of us call him God, for you say God. And so people think education is speaking English. But God knows for a community to be transformed, you need them to understand in their own language those concepts. The concepts of science, the concepts of medicine, the concepts of biology, the concepts of hygiene have to be communicated in the language of the people. The same in politics. You cannot help people be transformed politically if everything is in another what? Language. When people are standing councillors in Uganda there, when they are swearing in, I, Solomon, when they are supposed to say, I, Solomon, they say, I, Solomon. So even what they are swearing, they don't even know. Because they have to swear in what? Is that the same problem here? When they are swearing, everybody is laughing. So you cannot have a government of the people, by the people, for the people, unless it operates in the language of the people. It won't operate. So democracy will be just fake. Because it does not operate in the language of the what? It has to operate in the language of the people. Commerce has to be to the language of the people. Commerce, biology, hygiene, all these things have to be the language of the people. So developing a language becomes very important. That's how missionaries were very effective. For them, they understood that. Where did they get it? From the Reformation. When they started this Reformation, they started to realize that Bibles have to be translated in the languages of the people, so that the concepts of God, concepts of work, concepts of marriage, concepts of self-government, all these concepts have to be in the language of the what? If you teach them in their own language, people will understand this very, very much. And that because they think in their own language. Why do people struggle with English? Because they have to think it in Acholi, then translate it, and then speak. It takes so long. So long. So the speech takes, our speeches take very long. Because we first think in our language, then you translate, you say, that's not the right word. Let me choose. Maybe you should use your. By the time you finish the speech, it is 1 hour. Okay. So,